All right, I think it's gonna work. Setting up the webinar for YouTube Live. Now, let me mute myself here. All right. You have the link. Copy the link. All right, so there's, oh, no. Type answer. Okay, cool. There's the link. So that is going, and then I'm gonna hit record, and Ben, you can start with the intro.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Right. Tonight, we're happy to have two of my coworkers, Harsha Reddy and Zoe Song, here to talk to us about open APIs and how they brought it into our service catalog. So I'll hand it over.
Thank you, Ben. Can you see my screen? Thumbs up?
Yep.
Awesome. So thanks for attending our presentation on Open API Docs and how we went through our service journey and brought like a crucial part of building a service into our service catalog. Okay. So quick agenda for this presentation is we're going to quickly present our brief history, how we transitioned from a giant monolith to a service-oriented architecture. We'll talk about the problem of service discovery that arises with such a huge effort. We'll also talk about some solutions or some discoveries we ourselves made to make service discovery better. Some learnings along that journey and what's next for us, and we'll leave ample time for Q&A. Oops, sorry about that. So I'm Harsha. I'm a staff engineer on the service-to-service platform team at Wayfair. I'm currently building the modern security ecosystem for a service-oriented world at Wayfair. My mission is to make developers' lives easier and faster, and hopefully less frustrating than it already is. Small steps, we're succeeding. I really love good hard hikes, without any creepy crawlies. Zoe?
Yeah, hey everyone. I'm Zoe. I'm an engineer on the developer experience team, and I'm working on Backstage at Wayfair, which is the go-to place for discovering services, creating info resources, and executing workflows. And I'm a GIF and emoji enthusiast.
Awesome. My slides seem to have some sort of weird lag before I clicked, so apologies for that. Just give me a minute while I sort this out. All right. So brief journey into Wayfair's brief history of Wayfair's journey to decoupling. Wayfair is a traditional PHP shop, as some of you might be aware. We are a giant monolith with 3,000 plus engineers working on one giant code base in GitHub, making across around 700 commits per day. And that's on a bad day. On a good day, I measured like GitHub won't even like open up the screen for the insights. Like I can't render it. There's too many commits. So it's a pretty heavily trafficked monolith repo. And around late 2019, there was pretty much a unanimous agreement that I think it was brewing for a while, but then by around late 2019, if I remember correctly, that everyone decided that yes, we kind of outgrew the monolith. It was brewing, and then it's like plop, it plopped. The developer satisfaction, the operational satisfaction from various sources, and just the maintenance burden and everything was getting beyond getting very unsatisfactory. So we started our journey to properly decouple around that time from the monolith into a service-oriented architecture. On the right is like my kind of rendition. I tried to build a Mario fort, but take it for what it's worth. So yeah, enter Q4 2019. We welcomed Google Cloud, we welcomed Kubernetes, Istio Service Mesh, and a host of other cloud-native tooling into Wayfair. COVID hit around 2020, and it didn't break us right. We kicked butt, I would say, working from home. We built platforms, we built paved paths for building services at Wayfair. We gave developers a lot of tooling to build those great services that they were trying to decouple away from the monolith. We chose Python with Fast API, PHP Symfony, C#, .NET 5, and Java with Spring Boot as our languages, and in the brackets frameworks. And on the front end for rendering UIs, we have like, iOS and Android with Swift UI or Kotlin. And then for the web apps, it's we have single page apps and traditional web apps using React and JavaScript and SCSS. And we also integrated along this during this process. We integrated and aligned with the OpenAPI version 3, which is a standard for API documentation across the industry for RESTful services. We're also heavy on GraphQL. I joined Wayfair like 5.5 years ago, and majority of my life has been in the PHP monolith, using the GraphQL Webonics framework, trying to, get developers starting to use that. So we kind of have async APIs, Open API, RESTful APIs, sorry, and then GraphQL APIs, and we have gRPC in some corners for sure. So again, on the right is what I think of microservices. Do not take me that for an expert on that, but I suck at making graphics. Awesome. So everything was great. Earlier on, we were like, there were a few trailblazers building decoupled services on the platform, really aggressively decoupling. And they were the ones who were like promoting. If you know of this concept, like one of my directors has this nice concept called diffusion of innovations, which is like a bell curve where there are early adopters who are the most vocal, and they will support you, and they will go through the pain it takes and to use your tool or any platform that you build. And these were the trailblazers, and they were amazing. And we used that to actually improve our platform so aggressively, so fast. We even shocked ourselves. In a few months, we were there to, I would say, like thousands of decoupled services away from the monolith. Well, it's thousands of new services and also services that are decoupled from the monolith. We are seeing these spinning up every week. So yeah, it's a party, and the whole family is joining away from the monolith. The monolith is getting tinier and tinier by the day. Again, it is still the biggest blob, but everything's great. So you tell me like, hey, what's the problem, right? Well, the problem now is with these, with so many services and so many things being spun up, there are a few problems, right? Again, I'm not even going to go into the service-oriented traditional problems about, hey, is there a Death Star architecture? How are we resolving that? Is there an issue about chatty microservices, which accounts for that? Like, this is more of like, even when somebody builds a service, right? How do you make it discoverable? Like, what is the journey for making your service discoverable? Has somebody built a service that can let me, I don't know, calculate tax on a product, something like that? And with service discovery also comes API discoveries. If somebody can discover your service, you could maybe search on GitHub and discover a repository for a service, but that doesn't mean the discovery for the API is useful, right? And the same thing, coordination between API providers and consumers. This whole concept of API contracts. How do I ensure as an API consumer that my provider suddenly does not break their contract with me and move a version ahead and leave me hanging? And then there's additional human interactions like meetings, scrums, temporary channels. So communication overhead gone mad.
Yeah, so I can talk about how at Wayfair the journey of service discovery happened. So I'm wondering if that slide will go. Okay. So like Harsha mentioned, before we had like anything, there were a lot of asking around, you have to know someone who knows like another team that is working on a service that you need. It's searching through GitHub and reading through your emails, trying to find any relevant release notes, and looking through the org chart to see if there are any teams that seem relevant to what you're looking for, which isn't very efficient or reliable. So then next, my team built like a huge scraper that collected service metadata using Kubernetes and GitHub APIs. This was very comprehensive because it had all the ownership data using like our internal API and where it's deployed to, all the descriptions and relevant information, but it wasn't very usable. You couldn't like test out the endpoints right there. You had to be familiar with using APIs. There was no UI. So then after some searching, we came across this open source project by Spotify, which is a general purpose developer portal. You can discover services there. You can run workflows. You can create info resources. It's built using TypeScript and Node.js, and it's very extensible, and there are a lot of plugins that integrate really nicely with all the different services that we already have and using at Wayfair. So then I'll talk about adding Open API to Backstage. I want us to think about like how service gets created at Wayfair. I'll take you through the life cycle. So a developer would use an internal tool called Mamba to generate a project. And this tool leverages cookie cutter for code templating. And Mamba like sets up all the different things that you would need, like your GitHub repo, your build pipelines, your Kubernetes charts. So as an application developer, you don't have to worry about these things. And your service is live in minutes. So then after you create the service, let's say you picked a fast API as your project, but this can be applied to any other framework. So with Fast API, it's really easy to set up endpoints. Writing APIs is just like writing functions. It works similarly to API platform in PHP framework world. So let's say you write some code and you test it and deploy it. Fast API uses Open API spec, and you can use the Swagger UI to test the endpoints through a UI, which is really handy. So when a service is at a point where it's discoverable, this is where Backstage comes in. So we deploy most of our microservices to Kubernetes, and we have that internal Kubernetes catalog I talked about before for finding live services, and you can search based on like what template it was used to create it. So we can filter for just like fast APIs. And Backstage allows us to ingest these services through custom catalog processors. So in a catalog processor, we can search for open API files in these two common locations, and we build out this metadata that you see on the right. So we would get all the name, description, and most importantly, the API spec definition. So after the catalog processes these services, Backstage then displays them in a nice UI, and you can see the definitions, and you can actually play around with the endpoints right there. So this means like anyone at Wayfair can discover what a service is doing. They can reach out to the team that owns the service for any more questions. They can easily find the docs and the Git repo. So right now there are 175 fast API pages generated on Backstage, and Backstage auto updates these docs on a frequent interval.
Okay, that's me taking over. Thanks, Zoe. That is the real power of the platform that we built. Like, you can take your app from basically your CLI to deployed in Kubernetes on production to it showing up in Backstage, I think within 30 minutes. I bet somebody can get it done in like a record time. So we are trying to find records internally as who can get it fastest with some code production. That's pretty awesome. Unfortunately, we can't share the internal details, but trust me when I say it's awesome. I've enjoyed being part of that. I'd like to cover the now talk about the learnings we've had getting developers using this system, right? So it's all well and good that Backstage can somehow figure out what the API for a service is from the catalog API, but how do you generate those API specifications in the first place? These are kind of the three main strategies that are available for people. So there's schema first methodologies, right? So this essentially is you manually hashing out the OpenAPI schema, or using tools like I believe it's called Spotlight, I believe, or Swagger Editor is another tool. You can use tools like this to manually hash out the API. But again, the editing becomes kind of worrisome. It's not for the faint of heart, because you're editing YAML, and who hasn't had fun with YAML indentation errors? I certainly have broken production multiple times. So it's not for the faint of heart, in my opinion. There's certainly, if you want high collaborative capacity and easy discovery of your APIs, then maybe Google Docs, or even Confluence, or another tool like that. It comes very naturally to people who are writing their specifications in I don't know, Microsoft Office, Google Docs, and like plopping your API design or design documents in there might seem like a good idea. However, it is very error prone. It does not have any standards behind it, right? You can't enforce certain standards on Google Docs or even like Confluence, right? There's even like invalid request bodies, and it's not fun. The last option is code first. I'm sure you can see like what kind of style I'm biased towards as I'm explaining it. So the third one is code first. It's actually built into many API frameworks. Like I think Zoe mentioned API platform. Symfony has the API doc bundle as linked here. There's Fast API. .NET has Swashbuckle, if I remember correctly. So there's all of these frameworks generate API specs from your code. So you have controller endpoints, let's say, and then you add some code annotations or doc comments, and those documents are very well like linted and validated. Those get and from that you can generate your API specifications. So in that way, like your API spec kind of remains in sync with your code. So you add a new endpoint, you're automatically encouraged to add like the corresponding API documentation as I mentioned, as annotation or doc comment, however the framework supports it. So yeah, rapid prototyping is certainly possible with scaffolded code or like functions, controller endpoints with stubs or mock data. It's really easy to write some function signatures and share with someone like, hey, here's my API, right? So yeah, what we learned and I learned and everyone learned is code first is the best solution for Wayfair. But sometimes we do have to meet teams where they are. So for really, really early prototyping, when even the developers don't know what they want to build, you certainly can meet them in Google Docs, but eventually we transition them into a code first mechanism. And that has like won out and is being used at our org. So now we've figured out like what is the best way to generate these API specs for a service. How do you actually store them? Because as Zoe was mentioning that backstage, the custom processors use the Kubernetes catalog API in the background to figure out what services are live and serving any traffic. But how do you find the API for those specific services? Because Kubernetes certainly doesn't store them. So there are two ways about storing. You certainly don't want to hit the service to pull the API every single time, because again, that'll cause like more issues than not. Instead, like we decided like, where do we store these API specifications, right, for services? So one of the options on the left is GitHub. Git is very well versioned. Is that right word? Very well versioned. Yeah, sure. it is versioned. It's built. It has versioning built into it. So it gives us that for free. It gives a really clear and visible artifact in your Git repo where you can go and like actually read up on it, and you can use that for other like tooling too. Like the code travels with the schema. But the cons of that, like as traditional with any Git repo, is if somebody goes ahead and manually creates a PR on the pull request and it gets merged, well, the code is out of sync with the API specification again. In practice, this does make for some ugly PRs when you're adding a controller endpoint and you have to also commit a giant YAML file with the API or JSON file with the API specification. It's like people generally minimize it, and like it does create some ugly PRs where you don't want to. It just doesn't feel nice. So again, I think you can see my bias. The right-hand side is what we chose. We instead went with a static file repository. You know, on a cloud, it could be Amazon S3 or Google Cloud Storage, which we use. So write-only data storage. Once the API ships, we actually put it into a location on the file repository. Again, folders are very versionable if you think about it. So you can have like nested folders and you can version things that way. So this actually matches the code first design practice because it's automated. It's behind the scenes. When I'll talk about our CD pipelines in just a bit, but when you generate or you add a new endpoint and you are running your pipelines using, we use BuildKite, but Travis or whatever, it actually renders, it generates the artifact for the OpenAPI spec and uploads it automatically based on your semantic versioning standards or whatever versioning standards that your company uses. So yeah, it does match the code first design practice. However, the cons is on the infrastructure and platform level, we have to do some gymnastics to support. It's well and good to support your main branch, but imagine feature branches polluting your static repository. And I know storage is cheap, but it's just the maintenance overhead that comes with it, and we are ready to pay that penalty for a better developer experience. So yeah, we found that API specs go in static file storage or static file repository. So I was mentioning continuous deployment, right? So continuous deployment is a practice of automatically deploying your code, running automated tests, and only deploying to an environment, development or production, only when you're comfortable with it and the tests have passed. So failing a test in a build in a CD pipeline generally prevents deployment of product. So the question we had here was, do API docs even should API documentation, if you have like a bad change, should that even break the build, right? It's kind of nuanced as a topic here, because APIs have this concept of deprecation and non-supported endpoints, but certainly your API consumers might still be relying on those deprecated endpoints for a certain period of time. And there are new endpoints being added, and there's new versions of your API getting generated as time progresses. So it's very nuanced as to if you make a breaking change. So a breaking change here would be, for example, if you're adding two numbers and you suddenly change it from integer A, integer B as the function arguments to float A and float B. That's a breaking change. You do not change the behavior of an API without actually first notifying your consumers and then ensuring that the changes are backwards compatible. So that's what I call like a pretty bad breaking change, right? And at that point, should we break the build? What if that function is deprecated? Do you care, right? So the pros are like, yeah, if you break the build, it does detect unforeseen consequences for and other apps that depend on your API. They will not be impacted until you make that a backwards compatible change. And it also encourages developers to use the good API design practices, right? We have linters, we have like verbiage. For example, if your company has like specific verbiage that you want to use in endpoints, I don't know, you want like /v1/ get customer. Some companies like to do v1/customer/ whatever the customer ID. There's different like thought practices that are out there. So it can align with your org's developer practice, API design practices really well. The cons are like you're blocking teams. If the build breaks, guess who they're going to come with their, why is my API breaking? And they will reach out and they will, you need to have really good error messaging in there. Otherwise, like you don't want to block teams when it's business critical issue or something that needs to be pushed out. Trust me, people will find ways. And it prevents rollbacks, right? As I mentioned, like time sensitive and revenue affecting stuff could really be blocked if you need to like revert a change, and it considers a non-breaking change as like a breaking change. So yeah, what we learned is, again, it's a very nuanced issue. I think traditionally, like API and API docs in general, if you are causing issues, like have major flaws, they do break the build, but unsupported API endpoints should not break builds. If you have dropped support for an API, but if some consumer is still there, you know, hanging on to that final piece and not letting go, sometimes, I mean, sorry, that's a terrible analogy, but they really are like the laggards, right? In that bell curve that I was mentioning before about the diffusion innovations. It's like, it's okay. Like sometimes you have to let go in that case. And then for those unsupported API endpoints, we don't break builds. It's okay. So what's next for us? So those are the learnings along the journey. There's a bunch more, but I would say like those are the three main ones that I wanted to bring up. So there's what's next for us is in Backstage. Right now, it's predominantly fast API apps. That's the first target that we've chosen to attack. Again, we are still early, but we need to add a lot more language support to our CD pipelines. We need to add language support to our Backstage, and this is going to happen very soon because it's a very similar process. It's just a little bit different on how you generate the APIs and where they get stored and so on and so forth. You might see the fourth bullet that says manually generated open API files. And I see you saying, you just told me that they're bad. Well, there are certain cases when you still have to support them. So for example, if there's people generating apps in Golang or Rust, right? We don't have the platform support for them yet. So sometimes they might manually generate using a schema first approach. They might generate OpenAPI. You don't want to leave them out in the wild. So a lot of Kubernetes is written in Golang. So is service mesh and so on and so forth. So you want to support them, right? So there we make exceptions, but they're like under the pile above the highest priority ones. What about other kinds of APIs, right? We've only shown you RESTful ones in the GIFs that Zoe was presenting. So there's GraphQL. Can you render, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there's GraphQL has one of the best IDEs for testing APIs. It's called Graphical. There's also GraphQL Playground. It's amazing. So what if we could render that app into your API and people could start testing your API and like exploring it using the GraphQL docs that were built. There's also async API. Now that's a tricky one. Like how do you actually test async API or like render it in for applications that have Kafka producers, consumers, and need to work with topics. There's libraries that homegrown libraries, for example, composer packages or NuGet packages that we build. Like how do we need to show the API for them, right? How do they use OpenAPI? How do we render that? So there's a lot of work that we have like in front of us, but it is amazing to see the progress that we've made, and it's really humbling, like the positive feedback that we've gotten internally, and it's pretty awesome. Cool. So I think that's the end of our slides. We'll have some time for Q&A. Please do I don't know how Q&A works here. Is that like a chat, or do they unmute themselves?
Yep. Yeah, so the Q&A, for those listening, you can do the Q&A option directly in Zoom, or ask us in that YouTube link as well. You can just type your question in YouTube chat, and we'll bring those up to Harsha and Zoe. Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. So did you have more? Do you want to mention a few things here on
Sure.
the slide?
Yeah, if there's, we can wait for questions, but if you are looking to join us, we are hiring. Yeah, you'll be solving a ton of interesting problems, and what we've shown you is one piece of the pie. So there's like the rest of the pie you can always have. So we have openings in Boston, Berlin, Austin, Toronto, San Francisco. Take your pick. You can also reach out to us directly. Our emails are down there. Tell us how we did. There's a QR code here and a link for you that will be sent out later. Please provide us feedback. We are always looking to improve and share more. So the better feedback that we get, the more feedback, we'll share more pieces of the pie. So you get to eat more. It's fun. Thank you.
Great. Bobby's clapping. Your coworkers enjoyed it, I think. Especially. So I'm always good with the questions. I like breaking the ice, and we might wait a minute or two here for YouTube streaming to catch up. So the Open API linting stuff was really interesting. Did you end up using a out of the box package for building the linting rules, or like, can you talk a little bit more about how the linting is working?
Nice. Thank you for that question. So we used an off-the-shelf open source package called Spectral, which was recommended to us by, I think it was one of the members of APIsyouDon'tHate.com. They are the people working on it. So it's a really good tool where it provides the standard OpenAPI linting. So if you mistype something in the document, it'll actually catch it, like, hey, you mistyped or misnamed this. But you can also add things like, as I mentioned, if your company likes specific verbiage on the endpoints, if they like /v1 and they don't like /v1 1.0, you can actually code that into Spectral as a rule, and you can enforce that as a package into your CD package. It's essentially a shell script with a bunch of rules attached to it. So you just say, like, I don't know, for all intents and purposes, you can just say spectral.sh, here's my rule set, here's the OpenAPI spec, give me the result. It spits out like a great result that is very friendly. You can send that out as an email. You can also notify someone in Slack that, hey, your this PR is going to break these, going to make these breaking changes. Can you please go ahead and check the pull request or the CD pipeline? So it's pretty awesome. And I would highly recommend checking out Spectral. There's a bunch of recipes online for Spectral too. So if you want to use, I believe there was Zalando had a recipe. I don't remember correctly, but there was a few companies that publish these standard recipes that you can just copy paste these rules into your own company and slightly tweak them, and you can have like really good results. So that's how we did it. Yeah.
Awesome. Spectral sounds like a great choice there, and so it allows you to override the kind of out of the box rules with if you have like outliers on specific routes that you need to kind of just say no, do it this way.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really useful when there are big teams like orgs inside Wayfair that kind of have different mechanisms, like that even helps them customize it to their own organization. So we have our own code standards, but this org might have slightly different code standards. It's really flexible. We haven't gotten there yet. We are still on the very high level, but it's worked out good.
Cool. It's been a while since I've looked at the open APIs. The last time I was like, doesn't Swagger exist? And then I'm like, oh yeah, it's now open API. And then also the other thing that's been happening recently is I get open AI confused with open API.
Yes.
I'm like, no, that's a whole nother thing. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, let's see if we have a question here. Yeah, so Israel is asking about Swagger. Can you, so either this is a question for Harsha or Zoe, if you could kind of briefly recap the last, what has happened with the Open APIs project and Swagger and that whole transition, because people may not be aware of what's happened.
Sure. Zoe, do you want to go ahead or do you want me to take it?
You can take it.
Sweet. So Swagger is, so there's a bunch of like these competing standards, right? So Swagger was one of the first open source, I would say, organizations that came up with a standard for defining RESTful APIs. What that means is, what is an endpoint, right? How do you describe an endpoint to another person? Is it like the method definite, the name, right? The signature, along with the arguments, right? What kind of arguments they are? Any useful description, like if you say like sum AB, that is not very useful. If you can describe it, this thing adds 2 integers and returns an integer result, that is way more useful for the API. So that's what Swagger, I would say, pioneered initially. And Swagger got to version 2. What you saw in our slides was, it's called Swagger UI, the UI that you saw. It was built by that organization. And eventually they found that these standards are more useful, and they formed an alliance and called it Open API. I believe like we are at the moment at Open API version 3.1. It is the DNA is still very Swagger. So if you look at like Swagger version 2 from years ago and compare it to Open API 3, you will see a lot of similarities because it was built so well. But again, there's a lot of improvements on like, there's like better standards, better things over there. So hopefully that explains like the journey that took. It's essentially describe your API in a readable format. And if the Swagger UI is just that readable format, just going YAML, people say YAML is readable. It's not. You still need a UI in front of it to make it even more readable. That's what Swagger UI is. I don't know if they're going to rename it Open API UI. This sounds weird, but you can use a Swagger, the UI rendering tools. So once you generate your Open API JSON, which is the standard schema that gets generated from your API endpoints, you can use any UI tool. So there's an amazing tool called Redoc, REDOC, that can render API. There's also Swagger UI, which we showed, which is what we've adopted. They are really these amazing tools that you can use to render that OpenAPI JSON in a very nice, beautiful way for your end users or your consumers to like see and like visualize what your API is doing and check the behavior. You can also give them like, here's a mock API for you to even test. Swagger even does that. I think we showed you that a little bit today. So hopefully that answers your question.
I'm on mute. Yep. It sounds like it did. He said. So thank you for explaining that. Let's see.
I tried to make. I know that was long, but it's yeah.
Yeah. No, that was good. Maybe a question for Zoe on the backstage stuff. Sorry. I think you can answer backstage questions.
Yeah.
Can you talk about like authentication, like protocols for backstage that might be helpful for some people if they're interested in like integrating backstage into their environment?
For sure. So Backstage has a lot of different like ways that you can authenticate. The one we use at Wayfair is Okta, because we already use it and it integrates really nicely. But I'm not sure about like all the other options, but you know there's LDAP, bunch of other options if you don't use Okta.
Yeah. I mean, just having support for LDAP out of the box is probably good enough for most people. And I think LDAP works with like Active Directory or something. I think that's the same thing, right? Okay. Cool. Let's see what else. Any more questions from the audience? This might be a good time for Ian to start getting ready for the Longhorn mention here. But
yeah, I'm here.
Cool.
I can stop presenting, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Yeah, I need to. Ian, do you need screen sharing?
No, I figure that people can go to longhornphp.com on their own.
Yep. Yeah. So just go ahead and give us an update, Ian. I think now would be a good time, and then we'll wait to see if there's more questions.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, Longhorn PHP for this year, the schedule has been announced. Early bird tickets are on sale. And yes, we are still having it. 2 months from now, middle of October, smack dab in between, right between ACL and F1. So we'll be watching them to see what measures they take, but it's still definitely on. We have an awesome speaker lineup, 3 days, talks and tutorials, awesome set of keynotes. Go to longhornphp.com to view the schedule, to buy tickets, and to book your hotel. This year we have a hotel venue Holiday in Midtown near 290 and 35. So you'll just be an elevator ride from the conference rather than having to go between the conference hotel and the venue a half mile or a mile or two away. So I'm still quite excited for it. And I will say that the organizing team is all vaccinated, and if you're showing up, I would highly, highly encourage you to be as well. and we'll see where we are on case counts and that sort of thing in terms of additional measures. But with the second year running cancellation of Sunshine PHP for 2022, we are the only in-person conference for PHP stuff between now and at least like mid to late April, when hopefully Midwest can do their thing. So, if you want to show up, now's your chance.
Cool. And then have we decided on the early bird tickets, how much longer they're going to be available?
My guess is that they'll be available for another, probably 3-4 weeks. Once we're within a month or so of the conference, then you'll be looking at a $300+ ticket for Friday and Saturday.
Cool. Well, thank
I'm
you,
stoked for
Ian.
this, Ian. I think the biggest question is, how close is the best barbecue?
Not too far away. What's funny is we're walking distance at that hotel from a really good like bakery and sausage place. Barbecue, I think, is a little bit further away, but not by much.
So worst con, at least.
Yeah, we got to do worst con again.
Oh, heck yes, we're doing worst con.
All right. Well, that sounds awesome. A couple people said thank you for the presentation on YouTube, and it was really great overview of how Wayfair is implementing open API docs and how you're overcoming the challenges. So there's some feedback from YouTube. Yay! I think we'll just hang out here for a couple minutes. But thank you so much for your talk. That was great. Really appreciate you guys filling us in on the open API update.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks, y'all. So for everyone, me and Logan were talking about getting merge PHP shirts. So I guess ping us if you're interested. We can make that a thing.
Yeah, for sure. The more people that are interested, help with bring the cost down. Yeah, we'll make it happen. Might be a good thing to hand out for Longhorn while everybody's in person. I'm assuming we're doing. Ian, do you want to talk about shirt situation?
That is TBD. We're collecting shirt sizes on ticket purchases. The amount of time that those take is short enough that we'll have further announcements later. I will say, Logan, if you're gonna build shirts, make them nice and comfy and soft, and I'll totally buy 1 or 2 or 3.
Awesome. That will be appreciated. All right. Well, hopefully we'll get the videos moved over to the right YouTube channel. It might take another month or two, but I'll have to ping Bobby and Chris and remind them to let everybody know to follow, like, click that bell. What do all the YouTube people say? Like and subscribe.
Like, subscribe, and click that notification bell to insert Skillshare ad here, I guess.
Yeah, that's right.
Make sure to smash that like button.
Yeah, you got it down, Bobby.
My streamer voice.
Yeah. Yep. Well, we'll get there. And then I don't know if you guys, like would you guys be interested in joining Austin on the Discords if we end up making that move? I think we will for everyone that is still wanting to use Slack, we'll have them migrate over to the PHP UG Slack that I know you guys are familiar with. So I think that'll be kind of like, if you want to keep using Slack, that will be the new home. But Discord, I think, has got a little bit better features and for live streaming and searching for past history. Not, I think there's a lot of, every couple months, it's like people are like, oh, I can't find that thing, right? And then it's like, oh, we hit the 10,000 limit, and it's annoying because the Slack unpaid version has limitations.
I like Discord. The only real problem I have with it is like I use Slack for everything and I have notifications turned off on pretty much everything. So I'll just forget to open Discord for like a week and then I'll be like, oh no.
Yeah. Yeah, Discord's definitely noisy, and it's pretty hard, I think, to tailor the notifications on like what you want to get notified for. So
yeah, it's actually not too bad. I mean, you can mute channels, you can mute entire servers, and like do it for X amount of time. So the notification level stuff is actually fine on Discord at this point. Maybe it didn't used to be, but it's fine at this point. It's just a matter of, if this is your first Discord server that you're joining, then you're now having to run an extra chat app just for one thing. And I think that's the big hang up. Like, I'm in a bunch of Discord servers, so I don't care. But I think a lot of folks are like, well, I have like 15 Slacks for work and stuff. So what's the problem with number 16?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, we'll see. So some the handful of people, I think about 10 have filled out so far the survey, Ian, and there was like one person that said no. So we're mostly in agreement, and Dallas is on board, the organizers, the organizing team for the move. So looking good so far, but we still have a number of people to get feedback from.
All right, folks, I have to drop. I have a hungry puppy downstairs barking. But this was good. Thanks for having us again. This was pretty awesome. And yeah, if you have any questions, please reach out to us and I'll be happy to answer. And so will Zoe. Thank you.
Thanks, Harsha. Thanks,
Thanks,
Zoe.
everyone. Bye.
Well, just think about it, Bobby. I guess if you want to like add it to I know you guys got a few the Facebook thing and a few other things, but something to keep in mind.
Either that or get a channel on the PHPC Discord. It was kind of funny where I was chatting with Ramsey about that, and he was like, I was talking through, and he was like, well, Matrix and open source and all that's wrong. And
sorry.
During that DM conversation, he basically convinced himself, wait a minute, I should just use Discord for this. So he set up one, and it's like, cool. Yeah, that works.
Yeah, I'm cool with Discord.
Cool. Yeah. Are you using it for the gaming stuff a bit? You've got an account already?
Not for my stuff, but I follow a lot of streamers who have their own Discords and stuff like that. So I've definitely used a lot of other gamers' Discords.
Yeah. There's like every streamer has one, it seems like.
Yeah. I feel like I want to wait till I have a decent number of followers before I create that, but it seems like a lot of overhead for now.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right. Well,
Yep.
I'm gonna hop off here. Good seeing y'all. Solid presentation, and we'll catch each other online.
All right. Sounds
Any
good.
man.
I think
Thanks, everybody.
I think we should wrap it up. Yeah. Yep. Good seeing you guys. Welcome back from vacation, Bobby. It's good to see you. We Ben and I covered last month. It all worked out. I think we did a good job. Don't you think, Ben?
Nice.
You know, it wasn't as good as Bobby, but you know, it's okay.
It's a tough bar to live up to, I guess.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you had a good vacation.
Thanks for covering for me so I could make it to Iceland before they close the border, because you can't go there now.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
For the Delta COVID stuff, they closed it.
Yeah, I guess they just added Iceland, France, and Thailand to the list of do not travel countries.
So the U.S. is mandating that?
Yeah, the U.S.'s do not travel list now includes those 3 countries. I don't know what countries were on it before exactly, but.
Yeah, I'm supposed to go to PHP Serbia in 2 weeks, and I'm like kind of scared.
Yeah, the plane ride will be fun.
Yeah, like 20 hours in a mask, no drinks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make sure you double up on the mask, like N95, and like wear 2 or 3 of them.
2 or 3 N95s.
Yeah.
I might suffocate.
Yeah. Yeah, the overseas travel is gonna be rough, but good for you on making that trip. So
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, I can still get there. I guess hopefully I get home. You know.
yeah.
Are you coming to Longhorn, Bobby?
So Longhorn?
Yeah, you usually do, right?
I went last year. I don't think I'm not planning on doing any in-person stuff in the near future, but
Fair.
I think we were planning on trying to go to Italy in like next month or something, but that might get canceled.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Well, so did you go in Iceland? Did you go in like the hot springs or whatever that they have there?
We did a couple hot springs. We went to the West Fjords, which is kind of like I think it's like the most remote part of Iceland. And it's kind of like if you think of Iceland as the main island as a clock, there's like a part in around 10 o'clock-ish where there's like these fjords that like stick out. Otherwise, the island's mostly like oval shaped. And it's those fjords there, that area is like a lot less settled, but there's a lot of cool landscape features and stuff there. So it was a really cool place to check out.
Awesome.
Especially during the pandemic, because there's very few people there. So.
What's a fjord?
Fjord, it's like, I'm probably not going to say it exactly correctly, but it's like when the glacier carves out like a space in between 2 kind of mountain ridgy sort of things that kind of stick out into the ocean.
Yeah.
I think it's the area in between is called the fjord. I'm not totally sure. But.
As a Norwegian/Swedish person, I can verify that definition is correct. It's basically mountain, water, mountain.
Yeah, basically. And at least in Iceland, the roads tend to go along the outside. So it's like if you like think of your hand as kind of like a fjord, and you go around all the fingers basically. The roads usually follow the outside. There's a couple places where they cut across, but for the most part, you're like along the ocean, driving on very sketchy roads.
Cool.